Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, where we celebrate filmmaking, storytelling and cinema across the island of Ireland. So in this podcast, we chat with actor Diarmuid Noyes, who starred in Double Blind, Christie, and now his short film, A Knock on the Door, has just had its world premiere in Galway. So thank you so much for chatting with us.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
So you have had a really exciting and prolific career as an actor. You've worked on screen and stage. I'm wondering if you could kind of talk us through the journey of this. You've very exciting projects of late as well. But was Good Vibrations one of your first bigger projects?
It was certainly one of the most creative I've ever done. That would have been it was amazing, like because I got to hang out with the real guy Brian Young, who I played, and we got to meet him and Killian Scott and some of the other guys in the band. We all got to jam together, and the real Brian would teach us how to play the music, and it was a real creative process of just like following Brian around and just hanging out with him and going for pints and learning the whole his mannerisms and his way of talking, his speech, and it was a real insight into like how being with the real person can really change your whole preconceptions and and ideas of what the character is. I couldn't find a way in, and then eventually I noticed Brian would do this thing where he would just kind of like he'd do this with his hand all the time, and I realized he was really like shy around like people, and just like there was this constant anxiety, and that was my way in. That was then I found the way into the speech pattern and the accent and everything, and so that was very creative. That was a different level, yeah. And obviously working with Lisa and Glenn, went on to direct Saipan and everything, and they're just phenomenal. Like they trust you and just let you do your thing, you know.
And that's very interesting at that stage because if anyone hasn't seen Good Vibrations, that was a very, very long time ago. You obviously look very young that you couldn't have been taking on roles of that at that time. But I was wondering if you can kind of go back to where you were in your career at that time and preparing for embodying a real character and what were the skills that you had under your belt?
But back then it was very much like I'm 38 now, so I started when I was 9 years old, professionally, and I started in theater and everything. And at that time, I think I must have been around 21 maybe when I was doing Good Vibrations, and I just come off the West End. I was doing a play on the West End, so I was doing a lot of theater at the time and the odd bit of film. And there was a play that came along in the National actually, and everyone was telling me to go for it. I think they wanted to see me for an audition, and my gut was just saying don't do it. I was just like, I just don't have it. I don't have it in me right now, and I just don't. Everyone say this would be a great opportunity and do it, and I didn't do it. I just felt there was something in my gut that said don't do it, and then Good Vibrations came along like literally a week later, and let's say if I had gotten that play, I wouldn't be able to do Good Vibrations, and that just changed my whole that was one of those chapters that changed my process. But it was very much figure out as I went along. It was like Good Vibrations was it was very I was full of fear and anxiety, and personally I was definitely not grounded in my own life at that time. I was living in London and my first time living away from home, so I was very just full of fear and anxiety. And I remember the first day on set in Good Vibrations, I went when we were filming. I used to smoke, and I was just smoking. I smoked so much cigarettes. By the time I got on to shoot the first scene, I had to run to the bathroom and just get sick. So I was just like, I nervously smoked so much cigarettes, and they were waiting for me in the bathroom. And then it all kind of settled. But yeah, and I think a lot of people a lot of the actors felt that way. It was such high state. We felt like it's such an important story. We were all quite nervous. Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to explain this in a way that don't see the question as sort of an attack, right? Because I'm referring to the word ego, not in the sense of like how it's thrown around that it's like someone has a massive ego, they're a diva. More so,
Are you referring to it in the Eckhart Tolle way?
was it the pain body and the yeah, but more so it's yeah, just around being perceived. And I think when you're so young, you probably very few people have like that very solid sense of self because I mean your brain isn't even fully developed for another 3 years at that stage. And there's this protective force that exists around it, and it's observing how you're being observed. And then, in something that's so competitive and so highly driven and like and for every one role, there's people that are maybe jealous that they haven't gotten it, and the stakes are high and there's eyeballs on you, and your next gig depends on your past gig. So just
Mm.
is that where the pressure is coming from? Is it to succeed as an artist? Is it the ego? How do you or how did you at that time, and maybe your process as you got older to kind of dismantle that from where you as an artist is separated from you, the work, if that makes
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, 100%. It was back then. So I came from a kind of a traumatic, I wouldn't say traumatic, but like a broken family, alcoholic father, and I found my kind of sense of belonging, or the void was filled through acting, and I found a sense of family on through the director and through everyone. So a lot of it, what was then, was me wanting to become famous from when I was young, and my drive for acting up until maybe after Good Vibrations was to just want to be kind of, it was ego driven, and it was more the entertainment side of things, and fame driven, and just want to, you know and you put an awful lot of pressure on yourself, and you put an awful lot of trying to please people, and result based acting, and then I took a year out of acting then, and I just got very, I just got bitter, and I'd done a big show for 3 years away in Prague, and came back to Ireland, and I just felt like I was back to square one in a way. And it was Maureen Hughes, casting director, who was like, "Look, you need to re-find your love for it." And she was doing Bow Street at the time, and she told me to come and do the advanced course there. It was their first advanced course, so I found my love for acting.
Was that the one with Gemma Lee Devereaux was on that one? Was she the one of the she was if not the first, it was one of the first years. Like I remember like all of the stars that
Oh
we
yeah,
see
yeah.
now.
She probably did the full year course, maybe. We were the first advanced course where people are already in the industry and stuff, and so it's now the part-time course they've changed it to. But we would have had the likes of like Roisin O'Donovan, Michael Mullen, who's in an Door that we've
Yeah.
just done in Galway. Good. There was a load of great actors in it, like so it was a bunch of great heads, but that definitely changed my relationship with it. And then lots of therapy. Then I took a year out and just did loads of therapy, and I have been doing therapy since I was young, but I just needed to do different therapy and redefine my standing in life, and embrace the mundane a bit more, and stop dopamine chasing, and it changed my whole approach to acting. It's not about result based or being famous or any of that kind of crap. It's just about the process is the result, and that's enough for me, and just the joy of being on set and creating, as wankery as it sounds, that's what it is for me.
That's brilliant. And just I'm going to kind of touch on something. I'm not asking for details, just how it has impacted your craft and what you draw from. So it's more so I'm not looking for specifics, but that past that you mentioned and growing up in spaces, do you presently draw on that to help build your characters? Did that at the time embed you with a level of sort of empathy, or like you mentioned like dopamine chasing, and that is like a common like side effect for many things that many people like in the creative industry have. That I'm just wondering, how does that form you? Because to be so successful at such a young age, it is not just graft. It is inherently natural talent because it takes time to build that skill. So you kind of arrived informed enough so that you can hit the ground running to be on the West End and to nab roles at that time. So I'm just wondering if that sort of complex history
Yeah,
has impacted that.
it would definitely, my parents obviously did love me, still do. So, like, I have a totally different relationship with my parents now, but back then it was very, alcoholic father. My mum was struggling as well, and my emotional needs weren't fully met. So it was a lot of me, if something would happen in the family home, and I kind of was asking, kind of like showing that something was wrong, I was kind of the mirror to the thing. So a lot of it would be like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" Instead of like, you know, what my emotional needs being met. So it was a lot of me hiding and observing from afar and trying to placate things and read situations very minutely so that I could stop things kicking off or stop things escalating. So I became very good at reading situations and micro reading the micro details in people's faces and what people were really feeling. And my empathy became very astute, and then mix that then with, I go into acting school as a kid and then start working very young in the Gate Theatre with some amazing, like some of the best theatre actors in Dublin. So I'm learning all of this in a big melting pot while going home and still being that kind of person. And so it leads to a lot of sadness and loneliness as a person, and then shutting down, not letting people in and just wanting to do it all yourself. You just want to, you're afraid to let anyone in. So it's all about becoming performance based and as a way of defense, to not actually let anyone in. You're acting in a way of defense, so that the more you're acting and the more you're giving out and people are watching, the more you're a character and the less you're actually letting people in to see the real you, which is sad and lonely and traumatized, and your needs were unmet. So it was a long process of slowly being softer with myself and allowing people in, and yeah, so it's a different process now.
I'm kind of going to go back to that time because I think something you said was very interesting. So, for you to be such a young actor, to sort of be masking and on high alert so consistently through your life, and I think through that as well, we don't always get a sense of who we are, and then to go into spaces where they're like, feel the worst pain, like have your body be in this emotion for this time. Like when you're so young and you're learning your craft and you're learning how to access those points, is it catharsis? Is it re-traumatizing? Did you have trouble accessing it? Was it too easy and you had trouble stepping out? I was just wondering if you could talk to me about that.
It was all of the above. uh yeah, it's really, I would always struggle with any sad or deeply sad scenes. Anger I could access in a second. It was my way of covering up my sadness all my life. So I could hit anger, no problem. Crying, being sad was so much harder for me. And it was only in the later years, like literally in the last 5 years, where I did a lot of therapy in terms of that, of just sitting softly with myself and just sitting with my vulnerability and not DB. It's like keep holding a weight up constantly. That really helped. And just sitting in the mundane of life, because I was just running away from that. So I felt my sadness was connected with the mundane of everything. And the more I could just sit with that and not push anything emotionally, that was where I kind of get to where I wanted to be. Whereas before that, it was tiptoeing around the emotion on set. So tiptoeing around and just not touching it, and then you're forced in between action and cut. You're forced to just go there, and then you touch that emotion, and it's exhilarating, scary, and traumatizing, everything at the same time. And then cut, then you're back out of it. I would close off and just go to a cup of tea or a cigarette or just run away from it until I have to go back in and do it again. So there was an exhilaration of meeting emotions that I've always wanted to meet when I was a child and I never got to meet, or I was too scared of meeting, or I was never learned how to meet. I was doing it on set, but out of just pure jumping in the deep end, because nobody teaches you that, or like I certainly didn't get taught any of that. You're expected to just go on set and do it, and you're never told if you're doing anything right. You're just told when it's not good, or so you always just kind of second guess yourself and think you're crap as an actor.
And then in the beginning, stepping in and out of that, was that difficult? Like, or did it have, like, did it go into longer? Because if you've been denying something that's so universally part of you for so long, denying your whole body access to it, if you give it access to that feeling, like very much so, we are these systems. We can't always, our conscious mind only accounts for so much of it, and there's so much there underneath the surface. Was that hard? And was like kind of gaining, like, did you have trouble stepping out of a role for that?
Yeah, yeah. It would depend on how long I'd be shooting. There was one job that I did for 3 years, and after that I was quite depressed. Yeah, because I never learned. I would kind of substitute the role for everything else in my life. So I like that 3 year job. I actually gradually just disassociate from my own mother and my own friends and my girlfriend at the time, and substituted all them with the people who were playing those roles in the show. And so I was very depressed after that, and that was when one of the moments where I realized you need some sort of aftercare after filming, and to get back to yourself, and just kind of depending on how you approach it. Some people can just go in and do it. Um, they just step in. Like I worked with Conrad Khan just there on a show, just wrapped it like a couple of days ago, and he can just like he just literally just he's just shooting the breeze and just steps in, does it, steps back out. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I just struggle more with that. And I'm by no means like I wouldn't. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm not like a Daniel Day Lewis. Do you know what I mean? Or like I wouldn't, ride
Not
a horse,
method. Yeah.
yeah, or anything like that. But I do struggle personally. Just like I kind of, yeah, I'm a very emotional actor. I come from my emotions, and then so I learned that I get emotionally sad, or I get emotionally very drained after. So there's a lot of self-care that needs to be taken care of there, afterwards. So, but I used to just substitute that with alcohol, or other things, cigarettes, and just bad food and stuff over the years. That was kind of my way of dealing with it, until of recent, the last 10 years or so, I realized actually that's that won't suffice, that won't work anymore. you know.
And part of your job is that it's so public facing. And this is the last of the psychology and personal questions. I'm going to go right back to like craft after this. But is that it's so public facing, and if you're an editor, you probably know this, like editors will know you better than anyone, that you're just staring, looking at a screen. A director will watch your face 1,000 times. Everyone feels like they know you, even in the crew, and it's so public facing then. And then you have to go out and do things like this, and then, promote the work you're in, promote the films that you're in. I was just wondering if does that have an impact? Because it's almost like a kind of second performative job, or do you because you are so honest, that because you're so forthright, do you kind of like break down those barriers and just say, I will show up as me? Is that hard? Do you, have to sell a project? Do you feel on in certain spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I think every actor is on. I've certainly seen that, with anyone who's been in the public eye. Like I'm certainly not in the public eye or anything like that in terms of, but I
You've had
definitely when
you've
I've
had
been around
some
that.
Yeah, you've had some very recognizable roles, and very and we will get to this as well because it's very interesting, the path that you've taken. So would you be recognized? I mean, people would know of you, but not know you?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I've had people write to me and stuff, from who like roles that I've done and stuff, and I've had moments at the airport and things where when I've needed where somebody works at the airport or something, passport control. If I had issues with a passport, I had one time where she was just like, she let me through to the States when my passport mightn't have been the best condition, and she had seen me in a show, and she was like, "I love that." So that was a cool moment, but I don't really get it. I think Ireland is very different to anywhere else. I don't usually get that kind of stuff. But I back to your question, like I think for me, I just try to at this point in my life, I just try to be myself. I know other actors who they have a public persona, and a private persona, and then they have their roles as well, their characters, and it's a protection thing, But I've always been more of I prefer to I like connecting with people, and I like the truth, and I tried it as much as I can within protecting myself. You decide how much you give of yourself to people, and I think that's a healthy way to be. But I try to be what you see is what you get.
And just to summarize all of this for any young actors that are sort of starting their journey, the advice distilled down that you'd wished you'd had that you now have, because it seems like you've learned a lot and you've processed a lot, because it's one of those unquantifiable systems, acting.
Yeah.
It's so big and so encompassing. Like you've to build a world in your mind and live in it. What would be your advice for someone sort of starting that journey that wants to work in that space? I think protecting yourself sounds like a really good one, and your energy.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I don't know if I'm in a position to give any sort of advice anyway, but what I'll say what has worked for me and what I've learned just on my journey so far is for me therapy has worked a lot. Or anything that helps you really to navigate yourself and get out of your own way. Because I think a big part of acting is being in your own way, and by that I mean just knowing your your fears and your faults, and kind of like what your stick ups, or what psychologically gets you hung up on things, or what you need to work on. And it's a constant muscle, it's constant work, and we're always changing, so and the industry is always changing, and what's in vogue and what's cool and what kind of filmmaking is cool is always changing. So it's about staying in touch with reality and staying in touch with society. Like for me, I went out and just worked coffee, not necessarily for money or anything, or I just did it to be in touch with society again, because just sitting at home in a bubble waiting for the next acting job to come is not necessarily healthy. And then in terms of looking after yourself and the actual craft of it, definitely I would say acting school, I think, is a really good place. And finding a tribe where people know what good film is, and good acting is, and staying with that tribe, where you're not blowing smoke up each other's jacksies or anything. You know what I mean? You're just staying true to what's real. I think that's important, really, as an actor or any type of artist or anything. And then just being sound. You know what I mean? Just being like my mate, and then my mate Tony Doyle. He's another actor in the industry. I've always taken this advice with me. He's always like, don't try to understand it. Just run with it, just go with it, because the industry, it just can't understand it. And a lot of this stuff just doesn't come down to your acting ability either, getting cast and anything. Most of it is just, that's what I learned. It's just about like whether you match up with another actor, or you know who looks good together. And it's not necessarily the best actor, or there isn't the best actor, but it's not necessarily the talent that gets you the job. It's You just have to keep doing your thing, and don't do it for any result based reasons. I think that's what I've done anyway, and I don't know.
It worked. It has worked. So we'll go into this. So okay, I suppose we can probably start with your, I would, mm, sort of. Probably one that had the biggest impact, and I'm going to say that is Christie. I mean, you've series regular shows, you've very interesting characters and shows, but it just that is a film that seems to have done exceptionally well and meant a lot to a lot of people, and your role in it is really beautiful, and it takes just this other perspective on Christy. And if I'm wrong, if you have one that you're like, actually, this made a bit of it, like you tell me, but that would be sort of, for my perception of the work that you've done, I just think it's probably the most soulful,
Yeah.
longer form project. And it is also just done exceptionally well in terms of release and how many people have seen it and where it screened. And I was wondering if you could just tell me about getting that role and what you saw your responsibility of in portraying this sort of very, like, just a wonderful character, and the relationship between him and his brother, and that, you know, that pull of responsibility and your desire to protect yourself, and in this kind of world where you've no control. It's just like it's a brilliant story, and you did it exceptionally well. But I was wondering if you could kind of talk to me about what embodying that meant to you, like during the time when you were filming it and now.
Mm. It became, I think for me, it was down to really the colors of of being human, and it stemmed originally from Brendan, the director. He just reached out to me on Facebook and asked me if I wanted to do a short version of it, and I only had one scene in it. And when we started shooting it, meeting the kids in the cabin and the cabin crew, who were a lot of them were street casting in the film. And the cabin is this amazing kind of school of life, really, run by Gary McCarthy in Cork, and they teach these kids how to rap, how to produce music. They've gone into acting now, and just teaching them how to be good humans. And when we were just hanging around with these kids, and these kids have gone through backgrounds that I couldn't even comprehend, you know what I mean? And they don't like to talk about it, but if you ask them to rap about it, or you know get into acting about it, they'll do it, and it's like therapy. So when we met, that's what it was about. Like I just wanted to be down there for that short all the time, rehearsing with the kids, and we all became like a family. And it just I had no other reason to do it except to want to have these kids seen on camera. And then it went into a feature, and it became BBC were just like, well, what's this really about? And then they were like, well, it's about the two brothers. And so they made it more about that. And then it was the same vibe. It was just literally about wanting to get the cabin scene. That's all I really cared about. And it just so happened then that the actual process of it was so fulfilling then as well as an actor. And just kind of living in it. But it was a big, complicated process of rewriting scripts and stuff. But
I know it was a
it was
novella at one stage. There
yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah. But it was really just like what it meant to me was, and what I'm trying to get at was it was all just about like the cabin and all the kids down there, and Gary. They should really show you what it is to be human, and what it is to be a good person, and just to be salt of the earth. And that's what it was all about for me. And that's what Shane is as in a nutshell in the character. Like, he's just someone who's getting by and trying to be the best human being he can, and he has flaws and his faults, um and Brendan is one of the best humans I've ever come across, the director. And I just did it for all them, really. It
yeah.
was a huge process of just love and family, and it was like a big community project.
And
And
the
the end result, I'm so surprised in. But I wasn't thinking of the end result. I was literally just doing it as a artistic kind of creative process. That was where I was at with it. Yeah.
And to premiere at Berlin is a big deal. Did you know, getting that news? Like, when did you see it and, realized what they had done? Because I suppose, yeah, from a short to a feature, but just one that has done so well and one that seems to resonate internationally so strongly. Like the, the list of festivals that it has done and really been received well at is
Yeah.
very, very high.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we all cried. We were all crying when we first saw the first cut because the way they'd done it, and props to Alan, who was the editor on it. We had shot bigger versions of it in terms of performance. There was more dramatic versions, less dramatic versions. We had so much room to play because we had rehearsed it and workshopped it for so long that we were the characters at that point. So we had a lot of options and a lot of time on set to play. But the end results, they really just went with that shade of grey in between in terms of the editing and in terms of the performance, and the clips and the takes they used.
Is the part of you that's looking for their show reel, the big dramatic
Yeah,
tears moment going, damn, I wanted that.
yeah, because I was literally like in certain scenes, I was like, wait, hold on, you'd use that? Wait, I did this, and and it works because it creeps up on you, really subtly, and before we knew it, we were all crying. I was like, I don't know why I'm crying. It's the weirdest, and Dahi's score as well. You know what I mean? His with the music he composed for it just subtly creeps up on you. So they knew what they were doing. It was all about the subtlety and the shades of grey and not and keeping to the mundane and the extraordinary within the mundane of life, which really hits you as a person just living your life, So then yeah, I was like, wow, that's really interesting what they did, Um, yeah, and then the response to it in Berlin and everywhere we've gone. Um, we've been around a lot of places in the world now. We're lucky to travel with it, and they've no matter where you are, I think people respond to that human side of life, and there's those communities in all over the world, um and no matter where you are, a human being is a human being, and we all have those struggles in life, and we all are trying. I think everyone knows a Shane, everyone knows a Christie, so yeah, everyone responded.
And I think it tackles one of the important issues of male mental health, but not in this, kind of gritty, dark realism way. And I think that's one of the most heartwarming things when you watch it. It exists in this sphere where, as an audience, we're all, expecting this weight, but there's, I think, just a beautiful hopefulness and optimism that's underpinning it. That I think makes it a joy to watch as well in that space. But from that to the flat. So you
Well, but the other important thing about Christie as well, which I loved, was that the women are the pillars of the community within the whole film, which I really love. They're the strength, and they keep everyone going, which I really love that choice in the film. And like Stacey really helped Shane to open up, you know, emotionally, and she very much kept everything going for him and was his strength and his pillar. And I think it's important as well, like as Irish males, we do struggle to be vulnerable and to be open. And I think it really touched on that, about the importance of being vulnerable with the people you love, and voicing what you need to voice. Because even when I was in Germany at a festival, a man came up to me afterwards and he was saying how his two brothers have not spoken for years, and he was going to show them the film because he thinks it'll actually open up a conversation, a dialogue between them, because they're going through exactly the same thing that Shane and Christy were going through. So, I think it's pretty cool, like that sometimes what a film can do.
and that just shows the yeah, the kind of power that art has in terms of healing and its function. It's not always a thing to entertain, but also to process things and to hold a mirror up, which is definitely in the vein of A Knock on Your Door, which is screening at the Fleadh. And I think this film does something very interesting in that kind of closed, slowly escalating short film. I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about getting attached to that and
Mm.
what you saw your role in it as.
So I was working in a coffee shop at the time. It was a new building that they just opened, and there was an electrician who came in. He was fixing the alarms and doing everything, and he was like, "What are you doing on the weekend?" And I was like, "I'm actually going to Galway Film Festival with a film." And he was like, "Oh, my brother is has a film in there." I was like, "No way. Who's your brother?" And he's like, "Do you know Alan?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know of him at the time." So he gave me his number, and he's like, "Give him a call." And so I called him, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I've got this film home in Galway." And he got me a ticket for it. So I went to see it, and I was blown away by it. And we met then, and I was like, I really want to work with you on something. Like, we have to do something. And then about a year later, then he had this script, and he was just like, I've got this if you want to meet about it. So we had a chat, and I just really thought, it was just a really important subject matter to just kind of open up a dialogue about, or just a bit of food for thought about. And again, it's really down to, like, for me, it was down to, like, basically the film is about a couple who a young man knocks on their door and he's injured, and then we invite him in, and then there's rumors spread about what he's done and why he's injured, and it becomes about us facing our own prejudices about our lives and other people and our relationship, and then our preconceived ideas about each other and our relationships. And it came down to, again, about just being human, and regardless of you know race or people's ideas or opinions or politics towards other people, or the world, or everyone's human. And where does that come from? Where do these preconceived ideas come from, and these prejudices? And that's what I was really interested in exploring.
Yeah, that is fascinating, and I think that's slow. I don't want to say too much because it's world premiere and it's about to start a festival run without giving too much away. But it does tackle themes of like community violence and the rise of the far right. I mean, and that's there on the log line. So I do think it's one to investigate, like just, but it's also just a very, very solid film and so strong. Like as an actor now, and you've been booking like serious big roles, and you've had that regular in the Walt Sisters, which is an interesting you know, world looking at addiction and, intergenerational family trauma and how that plays out. And then you have your space in, kind of like in that world. You've a kind of show it's Available Blood, isn't it? It's available to watch on Netflix now.
Another family trauma thing. And then I just
Yeah.
come off the heights um for a Fox, which is another trauma family thing.
So that's it. Maybe it was like Christie that all those execs sitting down in
Yeah,
Berlin
yeah.
going, yeah, no, he does a really mean traumatized guy. So actually, The Heights I haven't seen. Blood is available
Mm.
to view now
Yeah.
on Netflix, and I think it's Channel 5, so it should be available on players. And again, you've very substantial roles in all these. And The Heights, so if it's Fox, it's bigger budgets again. Tell me about your character in The Heights.
I don't know if I
I
can say
can't.
anything.
Yeah, yeah. So this is
I'm not
coming. You're
sure. No,
working on it. Yeah.
I probably can. It's Anna Friel is the yeah, they put it out on Instagram, so it's okay. Anna Friel is the lead, and she plays my ex-wife, and Conrad Khan is this young lad who comes along and befriends our son, and then certain possibly sinister things. You don't know whether or not it's happened, but certain things happen, and then it turns into this kind of thriller, grief-ridden trauma drama. So it's a really really nice, yeah, six-part uh,
And
series.
I don't, I know there's twists and turns.
Yeah.
There's, that your character is an interesting arc. So again, it's a spoiler, and we probably ending it up to the gills. But in the, like, it does have a slightly different character description. Oh, well, actually, first I'll go on to working on sets at that scale. Do you notice a difference between an Irish set, a sort of UK series set, and then like, a kind of a big international studio set? Like, is there different kind of weird cultural things as an actor that you observe between those?
I definitely, yeah. I mean, I just came off a thing last year, a Netflix show, and we shot it in Italy, and it's definitely a huge cultural difference there. The Italians do it. They're just more. Everyone's smoking on set, and everyone's just like real chilled out, and the food is completely different. And it definitely felt like it was you could definitely get away with more, and
Yeah.
as could bend the rules a bit more and stuff. And the English sets are very similar, I find, to Ireland. And I think the Irish crews are the best. I just gotta like I think and I think there's a reason why everything's been made here, you know. I mean, we're just backed up like 6 months in advance now with crews and jobs. And I mean, we're all just so easy to get along with. Everyone is just so sound and we just get it done, you know?
I think there's an element where we're grateful to be here as well. It's like
Yeah.
there is, we are delighted to
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
And we're
proud.
yeah, yeah, and we're also really just I think why a lot of people like to work like come over and work with us, a lot of the Americans and stuff, is because there's no bullshit really. Like we don't we just it's the same with Australians. We're very just humble and just like we won't let you any egos in really. We don't do egos very well. And I think that lends to really good work, you know.
And do you find, does your preparation for each type of role, like, are you afforded more time on these different projects? Are you kind of like in some instances where it's tight enough, are you kind of expected to show up and rock? And then how would that compare to working on something much lower budget like Christie?
Yeah, well, funny enough, like Christy, we had a long time to prepare, and that was lovely because I could go up there, live there, and really work on the character. And we were BBC had just only they greenlit originally just the reworking of the script before they actually greenlit the whole project. So we were workshopping for 2 weeks as the characters, and then it was almost like therapy. We would get backstories for the characters, and then we would workshop that with another actor and get ideas and then we get scenes and lines and stuff. We put that into the script and send it to BBC, and then they would say whether they're happy or not. And then we had a lot of time, so that was a huge amount of prep. And then there could be bigger budget stuff where you just get it in it straight away, and you just have to jump in the deep end and figure it out. Um, and then same with lower budget stuff, and then like the show I did, the Netflix show I did last year, I got that months in advance, just off a self tape, and then had a lot of time to work on it, and that was an American role, so I had a lot of time to just work on the accent and get into it, you know. So it really did, but I think in terms of like when you were talking about the size of sets and the budget of jobs, depending in terms of how much time you have to prepare, that doesn't really depend on budget from what I've experienced. It just depends on how soon or how in advance down the line you get booked for the job. And the work for me never changes depending on the scale of the set or the budget. The work is the same because a human being is a human being, and the character is the character. If you start, I think I've run into that problem years ago where I tried to modify my performance for the scale of the set. I just felt overwhelmed, and it just didn't work, you know. So yeah.
Could you imagine, what is it? At this stage, it was nearly 14 years ago, was Good Vibrations around that? What would you, as sort of the older you, say back to you now? The things that you've learned, anything that you've gained along the way?
Hmm. Such a good question. I would probably say that you can do it first. You can do it and trust your gut more, and you're enough. That you're enough. I don't need to prove myself or please other people or yeah, I never felt enough, and I was always scared of failing, and to really just give yourself a break and show up, and the process is the result, just and enjoy it, play, let the inner child just out and play, and it's not the center of the world acting, you know what I mean? There's wars going on, and there's other people doing much more important jobs that keep the world going. I mean, art is important, and but it's not the end of the world if you fuck up. It's everything's gonna be okay. I think that's, yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Congratulations. Have an amazing time in Galway. Do you have any other screenings planned? Are you going to catch anything else besides your fabulous film on the Saturday, which is completely sold out? So,
Yeah. No, I've got to busy now up until Saturday, so I'm literally driving down Saturday morning for that, and then I've got to go back then Saturday night. So yeah, that'll be it. So I won't even have time to have pints or anything, We'll be in and out. Yeah.
yeah, so thank you so much for chatting with us. Have an incredible time in Galway. And yeah,
Well, I'll see you there, hopefully.
yes, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
So, thank you so much for listening. So, make sure to subscribe to Film Ireland wherever you get your podcasts.